Today, we're going to be talking about a core element of addictive thinking. And that core element is rationalizing and justifying our behaviors. In fact, I'm going to give you the top 5 rationalizations that I have most recently heard in my office working with patients and families struggling to conquer addiction. For those of you who are new here, welcome to Put the Shovel Down. This YouTube channel is all about helping you understand the science and psychology of addiction. In fact, it's the only channel out there that's dedicated to giving you both sides of the story, meaning the person that struggles with the addiction, their side, and the family side. It's our goal to put families and lives back on track. Okay, back to our topic. Now, some of you may have heard me say before that I am pretty dang good at rationalizing things. In fact, I might just be like the queen of rationalizing. I tell my clients sometimes, like, listen, you do something bad, come to me and I can tell you how it wasn't really that bad and maybe it was even a good thing to do because I'm just that good at it. I have to really be careful and watch my own thinking when it comes to rationalization because it really is just a human thing to do to rationalize what it is that we want and make it somehow okay, or while we had to do something, it's making our behaviors okay, particularly when we know maybe it's not the right behavior or the right thing to do, or even when it goes against our value system. And there are tons of ways to rationalize, like simple ways like, oh, I had to buy those shoes because they were on sale and it was such a good price, right? Simple general rationalization. We all have done it. These are the top 5 that I have heard most recently in my office from people struggling with their addictions. These are some things that I've heard. Let me know if you've heard these. And if I don't say your favorite one or one that you've heard a lot or think a lot, let me know that too, because it may trigger something in someone else and someone else may think, oh, yeah, I do that one too. So it will be helpful to everyone. All right, here we go. The first one on my list is some kind of version of believing that your good deeds undo your bad deeds. For example, I see a lot of like really successful business guys, right? And they do a lot of great things. They make a lot of money, they run companies, they may run marathons, they support their families well, they go on nice vacations, they're kind, they're polite, and have manners. Like they do a lot of right things, but they come home almost every night, get drunk, and pass out. But in their mind, it's like, I work hard, I take care of you guys, I don't cheat, I don't do this. It's not that big of a deal. Or another kind of version of that I've heard recently is more along the lines of, look, everybody just wants to focus on these few times when I have really just screwed up. Never mind all the good things I've done. No one wants to pay attention to those. And on some level, like I said, I'm a rationalizer too. On some level, I can kind of follow that. And I don't 1,000% disagree. But I do think that there are some bads that you can do that kind of like undo your good stuff. It's kind of like if you go to a restaurant and you order food and you get like this magnificent dish that you just totally love, it tastes great, but you find a hair in it. It just somehow like undoes it, doesn't it? And if you keep eating after that and you find another hair, then it's really done, right? Like it doesn't matter how good it is, how beautiful it was on the plate. It just screwed up the whole dang thing. So you can't use your good deeds to rationalize and sort of justify and be okay with your bad deeds. It just doesn't work like that. It's not like a canceling out process. Plus, to be really honest, some of the things that we do related to our addiction really do kind of trump. Like the bad deeds are like, even if they're fewer, they're bigger. Okay. So we can't think about it like that. Be careful of that one. It's a sneaky one. Number 2 is I only sneak and hide and lie because fill in the blank. Now I can tell you what the usual fill in the blank is from the ones that I hear. The usual fill in the blank is I only sneak and lie and hide because my wife is a crazy maniac and she just thinks anyone that drinks one beer is like an alcoholic. I only sneak and hide and lie because my family is so uptight and they're just super straight edge and they just are like ridiculous, like they just think anybody who like ever smoked weed or something one time is a total drug addict. Like, and so it's like I have to hide and lie and sneak because you're crazy, right? Because the place I work for is crazy, because this rule is unfair. So it's not me doing something wrong. It's me deciding that this over here, I just disagree with. It doesn't work for me. They're crazy, whatever. The most common way I hear it is somebody telling me that their spouse is completely unreasonable. And one question that I ask a lot to get to the bottom of it, and I'll say, well, is I'll say we do a lot of spouses here, and sometimes they really are pretty unreasonable, which is totally true. And then I'll say, are they like unreasonable about everything? And they're like, no, not really. So they're just unreasonable about this one thing. They'll say, yeah, just this one thing. They're just ridiculous. And that kind of makes me think, maybe there's a problem with this one thing. Because usually people that are just completely unreasonable are kind of like completely unreasonable, like across the board. You know what I mean? Like their standards are ridiculous. They're always finding something wrong, that kind of thing. And even if you have a spouse or a parent or family member or whatever who is completely unreasonable with many things, it still doesn't mean they're being unreasonable about this one thing, right? So you've got to be careful with deciding it's them, not me kind of mentality. That's a rationalization. Maybe even, it's definitely up there in the top 3 that I hear so frequently, like literally at least a few times every week. Number 3, I can't help it because fill in the blank. Let's look at some examples of that one. I can't help it because I'm an addict. I can't help it because everybody in my family does it. I can't help it because I'm in college and that's what everyone in college does. I can't help it because fill in the blank. It's this somehow of letting yourself off the hook and giving yourself permission. And this one is kind of bad because you're literally just, when you tell yourself you can't help something or something's not your fault, then you're just completely taking your hands off of it. You have no control. You have no responsibility over it. And it's just completely out of your control. Like you can do nothing about it. Come on now. Let's get for real. Number 4, if y'all see me looking, it's because I'm looking at my list, so I remember. Rationalization. I hear this one a lot, and this one's frustrating when I hear it because it's like so not true. Although all of them are so not true, but this one goes something like, it's the only thing that helps me with fill in the blank. This is kind of similar to I can't help it because, it's just a slightly different version, right? It's the only thing that helps me with my depression. It's the only thing that helps me manage my anxiety. It's the only thing that will help me lose weight. It's the only thing that will let me work those long shifts and I have to work those hours to support my family. It's the only thing that allows me to be creative. You see what I mean? It's another version of I have to because. It's slightly different than I can't help it because. It's just a slight different of I have to do this because fill in the blank. And the reason why that one is frustrating for me to hear is because the nature of addiction is whatever the substance does for you initially, because let's be honest, there are some benefits to lots of substances, right? It does something helpful and beneficial for us. It fixes a problem, it solves an issue, whatever. It really does in the beginning, right? But once you've moved over into the addictive part of it, not only does it not fix that issue for you anymore, it's making the original problem like 10 times bigger. And I have a whole video on that in case you want to go look at it. But literally anything that's addictive does that. Like if you take stimulants because you're trying to work harder, you get, after the stimulant wears off, you get a bigger crash. You can't function. You can't even get up out the bed, right? And not only that, it's like the stimulant has less and less effect. You need more and more. It doesn't last as long. And ultimately what you end up with is no energy, can't function, can't do anything, can't even wash your laundry when you're saying, I have to do it because this is the only way I can get all this stuff done or whatever. So be careful for that one. And I know that one's tricky because in the beginning, maybe it did do that for you. But in the end, I'm telling you, it's only making the original problem worse. That's for sure. Number 5. Now this one, oh my goodness. This one just makes me have to do my head shake. Ready? It'll be different this time. This is kind of like a relapse rationalization. Like before, it was really out of control because X, Y, and Z factors, but this time it's going to be different because I'm not going to let it get out of hand. I'm not going to drink liquor. I'm not going to be around that person. I'm in a better stage, whatever. It's this version of, okay, like I'm going to do it, but somehow this time it's going to be manageable. And the reason why this one is hard for me is because it's just like watching an inevitable train wreck and just knowing that it's coming and there's nothing you're going to be able to do to stop it. And what makes it worse is it's usually, when I'm watching this, it's like with someone I really like and it's done so good and it's like gotten on track and you've really gotten your hopes up and you're just like, really, you just want to try to do that again? Like, even though we've been through all this before. But yes, it happens almost 100% of the time, because most of the time when people are in the recovery process, there is some trial and error. And this doesn't mean that they don't mean it. And any of these rationalizations, these are just commonplace things. It doesn't mean someone's never going to get better. It doesn't even mean that they're never going to get over these rationalizations. These are just common ways that we make ourselves feel okay about our choices. So let's give it even a little deeper into why we have to rationalize. And anybody that's watching this video, you should be able to identify things that you rationalize. We all do it. I told you I'm the queen of it. Okay. So we have to rationalize because when your behaviors go against your value system, you start to feel guilty and you start to feel shameful and you start to feel really bad about it. And man, that stuff is like a really uncomfortable feeling. And we got to make that feeling go away. And the way that we do that is to somehow justify or make the choice okay, like I had to, or it's the only thing that does this, or whatever. We have to somehow justify it in our head to deal with that shame and guilt. And like I said, every person on the planet does this. It's just that when you have an addiction, you're doing so many things that you don't agree with internally and with your value system that you begin to rationalize and justify so much, and it goes so long and so deep that you literally lose sight of the truth. I mean, you really like believe it and dig deeper and deeper and deeper into that. And it can become problematic. Some of you guys have heard me say, like with end-stage addiction, a lot of times you're dealing with someone who's kind of like delusional about the situation. And it's hard to get them to see the truth. And that's just because there's literally one rationalization built on top of another, built on top of another. It's so deep, like you can't even find the truth. And a lot of times it's not even until someone gets out and on the other side of it that they can see the truth. There's a guy in my office this week who's doing really, really good, by the way. He's not been drinking for a couple of months now, at least, I think. Maybe more than that. And he is telling me about his old pattern of drinking. He worked for himself, so he had like flexibility. He said, all my drinking was in the morning. He'd literally be in the parking lot of like the store at 9 a.m. so he could be there when they open. He's like the first one in the door. He had to buy stuff, right? And he drank only between, I think, like 9 and 9:30. I said, you should drink between 9 and 30? But the amount was like crazy. But in his mind, it was like, and he's able to tell me this now, like almost like laughing, and we're like kind of like teasing about it. But he's like, yeah, it was like breakfast, right? Like you might be at Hardee's waiting for your breakfast so you can go to work. Like this was me at the store needing to get this done so I could function for the day. And he had all these like plans and systems in place for how to make all of that work just right. And if something messed with the plan, the whole day would fall apart. And he'd done it so long, it just seemed regular. And he was telling it to me one day, just so casually, and I was like, really, you did that? And then I started kind of teasing him about it, and he's like, I never thought about it like that. Like, that is pretty crazy, right? And then we were both kind of laughing, because a lot of times you have to get out of it to see it. You got to get out of the storm, because when you're in it, you're so close, you just can't see the truth. All right, let's see who's with us live. If you're joining us on the replay, we are so glad to have you as well. Be sure you can interact with us and comment, ask questions, because I do come back and read all of those. Let's see who we got with us today. I see Colette. Hey, Colette. And Rashara. Let's see. Rashara says, I hope I'm saying your name right, Rashara. Exactly. Just happened to me this morning. My husband said he has to use one more time to get through the relapse so he can just be done. Makes no sense to me, but it does to him. Dude, that's like the most classic of classic. I call that one last time. In fact, I have a whole video about these rationalizations. I sometimes call them monster mouths just to give like a visual or a metaphor. And it's literally like the most classic, most oldest monster mouth of all time, right? One last time, because it feels like it's an itch or like it's a scratch and you just need to scratch it. And if you just scratch it, you'll just get that relief and then it'll feel better, right? Like, when you have just an itch and it's like, just get to it. But it just doesn't work that way. It's the nature of addiction. Like you scratch it and it gets worse. And scratching it only ever makes the itch worse. But there's definitely a feeling like that inside. People say, I just got to get it out of my system or whatever. Well, it just doesn't get out of your system that way, right? You literally have to stop doing it for it to get out of your system. It will eventually, but it doesn't get out of your system by just keeping on going at it. But that's a pretty classic one. Hi, Teresa. Good to see you. And Saska and Steven. Saska says, my son says marijuana helps him with his anxiety. Man, I cannot count. I could not even tell you how many times I've heard that. And the reason is it's that one where it probably does initially, but in the end, it's only making their anxiety like 1,000 times worse. And one of the things I'll ask my clients when they tell me that is I'll say, well, is your anxiety better or worse now than when you started? Guess what? It's always worse because that's the nature of the problem. It helps in the short run, helps about this much in the short run, and hurts about this much in the long run. So it just doesn't work. Let's see here. We've got Pinky. Hi, Pinky. Facebook user says, hello, I want to introduce myself. I'm new to the group, but not to the lifestyle. I can't see your name, but we're glad that you're here. Mia's here. Maggie B. I like that. First time I caught live. I've been with my boyfriend for 9 months who's battling heroin addiction. Your videos have been so helpful. Thank you. Well, thank you. You're so sweet. I'm glad you're here, and thank you for the nice feedback. Mary says, my son keeps telling me he's going for a walk and he's not going to drink and that walking helps. Every other walk, he comes back drunk. Mary, I don't know how old your son is, but in my office, we kind of have a saying, and we're just sarcastic. And if you don't like sarcasm, I don't want to be offensive, but when you deal with this all day, you just get so used to it, right? We always say, if you got a teenage son and he's burning scented candles in his bedroom, and we have the same thing about going on walks. Teenage boys, do they really go for walks? I don't know how old your son may be older than that, but I'm always like, doesn't happen. Like, no, teenage boys got a Yankee candle in his room burning it because any other reason than what you think. So yeah, I'm kind of with you, Maggie. I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, a lot of times it's I'm going to go drink or get high, or I'm walking because I'm meeting my buddy down the street and they're going to hook me up. That's usually the case. Deborah says, son is delusional, has so much rationalizations, can't communicate suggestions. Deborah, you're saying he can't communicate or you can't communicate. Sometimes when you're dealing with someone in those later stages and they're so delusional, you feel like you can't communicate with them because you just feel like you're beating a head against the wall. And it's so like, are you serious? They say some of those outlandish things and then that triggers you. And then you want to like argue or fight about it. That's kind of how you know you're dealing with someone delusional, is when you get to that point, you're just like, what? And then it's just so like unbelievable, the things they're saying. And you're like, really believe that? And then you just want to argue and it sucks you into argument and it's not good. James says, what's the best thing to do if you have a relapse? James, that is an excellent question and it deserves a really thorough answer. And I have a whole playlist on what to do to prevent relapse and what to do if you find yourself in relapse and what to do even if you've been in a relapse for a long time and you're having a hard time pulling it back together. I address all of those things in there, and I think that's an excellent question to be asking. Let's see here. Oh, Mary says he's 43 here. How do you convince a person after a doctor has told them that marijuana is helpful for anxiety? Oh my God. I know, right? It makes me crazy. If a doctor says anything to anyone, like literally, I just don't even know if it can be undone because sometimes it's just like they got the stamp from God. And I hate to be mean like that, but that's what it's like. It's like beating your head against the wall. There's nothing you can do to convince them otherwise, other than let them convince themselves otherwise. And I hate I don't have a better answer for you other than to say, I feel your frustration. And that actually happens, not just in that kind of situation, but in a lot of situations. The doctor will tell you something, but a lot of times, and as mad as I get when I hear these things, I just want to be like, are you serious? A lot of times the doctor's saying that because they're not being told the whole dang story, right? They're gonna say, "Well, I smoke like once a month or something crazy," like, and they're not being told the real whole story. So they're giving advice and they're saying something back when they're being told like this much of the story, because the addicted person sets up whoever they're talking to get the response they want. You know how I know they do that? So they do it to me all the time, right? They'll say, well, what do you think about this? And they'll tell me just enough details to make me say the answer they want me to say. They're sneaky like that. If you are in recovery and you're watching this, let me know if you've ever done this before. Let's have an expert witness. Let's see, our Facebook user is named Veronica. Hey, Veronica. Saska says, my husband says he's miserable when not drinking. What do I say to that? Probably so. If you're miserable when you're not drinking, it means you're really dependent on drinking. And I would say that's a problem, right? Because you don't want to only be able to experience joy, happiness, contentment, anything when you're drinking. That is the biggest reason to get out of a cycle like that, I think. So I wouldn't argue with him because he's probably telling the truth. The thing of it is that's a major sign and symptom that someone has a problem. And it's hard to convince them that if they get sober long enough, they actually get past that and they feel so much better. A lot of times with clients I have, I just have to say, listen, will you agree to just get sober for X amount of time? It has to be more than 2 weeks because first 2 weeks is miserable. And then we'll evaluate the situation. Because if you can get them sober long enough, whatever it takes to do that, then they actually get past that really miserable part and then they feel better and they realize, wow, like I feel infinitely better. Heidi says, what if I rationalize switching substance? Is one better than the other, alcohol from marijuana, cough syrup? Oh man, I almost put that one on my list. I'm glad you said that because it was one I toyed with. Like one of the things I had on my list was if I don't use blank, I will relapse on blank, bigger, worse substance, right? If I don't, and a lot of times it's like use marijuana or take my Xanax or whatever it is, then I'll definitely go back to this harder drug. And so I hear that one all the time. The problem with that is a lot of times you go back to the other substance anyway. And even if you don't, the new substance becomes a problem in and of itself. So I'm glad you said that one. I actually was thinking about that one this morning and it's a pretty common one. Kathy says, delusional. After I asked my boyfriend to leave, he was so perplexed he couldn't understand how I was happy and thriving, and he was unhappy and falling apart. Right. It's like that when you're dealing with someone like that and they're just in the middle of it and they can't see clearly, it's just like, wow, really? Like sometimes you just get left with no words to say. Sometimes people tell me things in my office that are just like, really? The thing I think that gets me like that the most is just because I hear the same things over and over and over again in my office from like people who've never met each other, completely different, maybe even like live in a completely different part of the world. I can like talk to that person and I can almost tell you, here's what they're going to say. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's exactly what they say. And it's just like, wow, it's like amazing. It's like amazing and mind-boggling and frustrating all at the same time. But the other good thing about that is I also watch people that say those things get better and get on the other side of it. And when you're in the middle of it, I know it feels like it's never going to get better and we're always going to be here. And my loved one says he doesn't ever want to be sober, whatever, but I don't listen to that. I'm just like, okay, we go. We're starting at square one or we're starting at square three. And there's a pathway out of that. Oh, we got a expert witness here. I love it. Sheila says, I would make up stories while my nose was stopped up that I had to lie about the rapid weight loss. So Sheila's saying I would sort of say why I was having these symptoms, and I would make up all kind of excuses about why that's happening. That's right. Hey, Jamie. Nana says, why do addicts think you don't know when they're using when you know they are and they try to say they're not, but you know they are? What do you do with that? One thing, and I actually have some whole videos on this, is one thing is don't ask the question, because it's almost an instinct to say, no, I haven't. Like, even when they don't even want to lie, it's just almost like a reflex. They're like, no, I haven't, right? I have had clients before, and they say, no matter what, if you ask me when I'm drinking, I will never tell you I'm drinking. You ask me next day, be like, yeah, I was drinking. You know what I mean? It's almost like a reflex. I'm not saying that to let them off the hook, or I'm not even saying they can't help to lie, because they can, but I'm just saying, like, one thing I say is don't ask the question if you don't want to get lied to. Just be like, wow, I see you've been drinking, or whatever it is. And I've got a video coming up soon about when to call out lies and when to leave it, and that one may help you. And it's not out yet, but it's coming very soon. So you basically, my answer to that is don't set yourself up to be lied to, because then you're just going to go round and round, and then you get in this power struggle about proving that they are, and then that power struggle makes you say and do things that lead to other power struggles, and just don't even go down the road. You know they are, they know they are, and they even know that you know that they are, but they just won't admit it. I know what you're talking about. All right, now I have a ton of resources for you in the description. I think if you're watching on YouTube, I should have the link to the page that has all of our free resources. And also, exciting news, next week we are opening the membership to our parent group. This is for parents who have a son or a daughter, doesn't matter the age of the son or daughter, who's struggling with addiction. It's going to be ran by Campbell, who is our parent family recovery expert. It's going to be awesome. We are opening the doors of that next week. So if you are interested in that, make sure you're on the waiting list, because it's only going to be open to new members for a very short period of time, like 4 days, I think. So make sure you get on the waiting list. I will post that for you in the comments so that you have it. And up next, more videos on addictive thinking.